about it before, you can see what had been happening to Bank of America. I mean, that's awful. No good news. Everything's terrible. Bank of America is going to fold. No, it's not going to fold. But you can see that in the middle presenting this, and the group, not surprisingly, was a little bit hesitant. They wanted to, quote unquote, do more research. Well, my student presented it and wanted to buy some for his own account, but didn't have his own account open. At any rate, bought it, if you would have bought it here, which is the exact time we talked about it, at that time, on the 60-minute chart, the Bossilator had a reading of 1,115 bars. So forgetting the missed weekly pivots for a moment, this was just a flat-out great Bossilator trade. And as you can see, if you would have bought anywhere in this area, the price then went up, and he was very excited, and he was kind of teasing his investment group. Then it went back down, and they were right. But we all know what the end of the story is. It hits the 800 here. Now, that would have been a great trade, I think around 20-25%. However, you can see Bank of America has continued to rise. Now, getting back to the missed weekly pivots, which is also interesting. If you switch now Bank of America to the daily chart, which is how we started looking at Bank of America, is how we found it for his investment group, here's that same moment where he would have entered the trade. At that time, not only is it Bossilated with the Bossilator reading of 1,029 on the daily chart now, but we have a missed weekly pivot right back up here from earlier in the year in July at or around 1082. So not only what we had in this trade, not only do we have a Bossilator reading, and we had tons of space, but we have a missed weekly pivot that's going to end up being probably a little bit under the 800, but is it on its way? Well, it not only surpassed the 800 simple moving average on the 60-minute chart, but it's blowing right through that. And is it on its way? Probably. But this was one of my favorite trades that I've seen in stocks for a long, long time. Any questions before I go on? Scott, how do you color your candles when stochastic? And that is just a basic trade station. And I'll show you right here. I go to Insert, Paint Bar, and this has Stochastic Slow K, and that's all I do. You can actually call, if you're a TradeStation client, you can actually call TradeStation, and they now have an easy language department, and they will actually get someone on the line between 9 and noon and talk you through it, even if you know nothing. And you can take what you already have on TradeStation, and they'll just modify the code for you and get it to be colored. But that's all I do. That just came with it. What you do have to do is then adjust your stochastic reading. When you click on it, it'll say 30. Sometimes we use the 30-10-10. Basic stochastic setting is 7-3-3. You don't do the 3-3 part. You just do 7, 10, 15, 20, 30, or whatever, and it colors the candles. It's just a luxury. You can obviously just place the stochastic on your chart and just read it from there. Pretty easy. Any other questions coming in? You're welcome. Look at euro dollar. Absolutely, I'm going to look at euro dollar. Is there a stochastic percent K or percent D? Well, let's find out. Stochastic slow. Inputs are stochastic length. Honestly, don't know. Yep, percent K, percent D. Hope that answers your question. Typically for a 60-minute chart, the question is how long does 60-minute chart or trades last? Typically about a month and a half. You can see on the 60-minute chart, and I'll come back to questions in a moment. On the 60-minute chart here, you can see that this trade, it had a great setup. It was clearly Bossilated over 1,000. You can see this one was end of December, right around December 1st, and hit the 800 right around January 10th. That's pretty typical. If you wait for a reading of 1,000 or greater on a 60-minute chart, you're looking at about a month trade. And this was frustrating here, but this was a very nice climb to where it pounded the 800 right there. I want to show just a couple more examples, and then I would like to get to the euro dollar. This is a real trade that my friend is in, and I wanted to speak about it just for a moment. because it doesn't quite follow the rules, but it's another way you can use the Bossilator reading. We've kind of mentioned it before. Here's Amedesis, AMED, and here's the 800 simple moving average here. And this is right in the area where my friend and we bought Amed. Now, the problem here is that it didn't have a great Bossilator reading, 347. Definitely would like that to be much higher. However, this is our rationale for getting into this trade in the first place. It's twofold. Number one, if you look at the 800 simple moving average, the price at that point was $36. We bought it at $11.34. What are the chances now, if you were Warren Buffett and you were trying to bet on a stock that can double or triple or quintuple, my thought here was that yes, it was only 347, but because stocks have an upward bias, because we're getting this at well over 50% off, I thought it was a safe initial buy. He didn't buy a full position, he bought a half position, but I thought it was a very safe buy here for two reasons. Number one is we've got so much space at the 800. Even if we don't get there, we can get a very nice trade. But we also had a missed weekly pivot very recently, back in the fall, at 2138. Now let's say we don't even get to the 800 because it doesn't have a great Bossilator reading. 11 to 21 is almost 100% trade, and that's why we got in it. We wanted to desperately, and I'll slide down to the 60-minute chart, and I'll show you a decision that we probably should have made on this stock. Was after we bought it in our ellipse area, it went down and dipped down in here, and we actually had a conversation on the phone, should we buy more Amedesis? And as you can see on a 60-minute chart, we had a very nice reading at this point. We're at 970. Because we're going for a huge target, and because we had so much room on the daily chart, I said no. I turned out to be an idiot, because if he had bought here, not only would he could have gotten out of break even, which if you're in a trouble position, sometimes that's the best way to go, just get out of break even and move on. But you can see that even though it lingered around, it went all the way up and almost little touch here, almost had a little touch here of the 800, and we could have even gotten out. And if he had bought down in the 10 range, we could have got ourselves maybe 20% on this trade. However, I'm very, very comfortable with this trade because of A, the missed weekly pivot, and B, the 800 up above. Right? And one more example I wanted to show, and then I want to get into the currencies. Here we have an excellent trade. This is just AFAM, and I got this, it was the first listing on the Magic Formula stock list that we've talked about before, just a scan of companies that are good companies that are low in price. This, not only AFAM, again, not a great Bossilator reading, as you can see down here at 137, but tons of space. Stochastic went oversold here, blue candles, blue candles, blue candles. I didn't put the stochastic up for you, but that's blue. As it came out of stochastic here, we could have made a run with a missed weekly pivot here and the 800 up there. And obviously, too, I love trend lines, and that would have been a trend line break also right there. Now, I did a study on Arrow, and I've studied a number of stocks, and Aeropostale, ARO, and there are no missed weekly pivots in its 8-year history. AFAM, I don't know the exact number, but it's extremely low also. So if I see a stock, if I study it, and usually they only go back 8 or 10 years, and I just do it by hand, but if I go back and see a stock that is very, very drawn to its weekly pivots, I will use the Bossilator setup using the space, hoping, keeping my fingers crossed for a reading. But I found in the stock market especially, even if you don't have a great Bossilator reading, you can take a counter trend trade with a missed weekly pivot and do very, very well. Any questions before we move out of equities? Any research on missed pivots with Forex? Yes, absolutely. I did, and actually I can post it in the forum if you like. I did a study on several currencies with missed weekly pivots, and it's an extraordinarily high percentage in Forex also. Forex is very, very drawn to its weekly pivots just the same. I think I did about 7 or 8 currencies, and I believe the success rate of hitting is in the high 90s. I think it went from 95% to 98 or 99% of hit. Now, that's kind of a deceiving number because I include current times and I include the ones that may have been hit a couple days ago. But no, it is extraordinarily high in currencies also, which is why Rob mentions those from time to time. But if you use missed weekly pivots in conjunction with the Bossilator rules, it's extremely powerful. The one difference is, though, the leverage. In Forex, it will hit the missed weekly pivots, but if you go in and bet too big, by the time, and let's say you don't put any stops on it, if you use stops, that's not really a problem. But we're not using stops in his med trade, for example, just because we're just going to rebuy if it gets lower, to be honest. But if you do that in currencies, in all my testing, it can go down and it can deplete your account before it gets to that missed weekly pivot. But it's going to get to that missed weekly pivot, I guarantee it. So we have to find a good time to start trading for that missed weekly pivot. And of course, a Bossilator does give that. If we get a good Bossilator reading and we get a target at the 800, but we have missed weekly pivots also in addition to the 800, then that's extremely powerful. So yes, it absolutely works on Forex, and I have tested that. If you are interested in that research, I'd be more than happy to post that in the forum this week. But yeah, absolutely, and I would get them on your chart. Absolutely, I would. Any other questions come in? Stops are below. As I said in his Ahmed trade, we didn't use any stops because it was only a half position. In all of my Forex trades, I do not trade without stops. I would use stops. So, for example, on this AFAM trade, absolutely, on a break of the trend line and the stochastic, I would absolutely have the stop down here, and there's no trouble on that whatsoever. Meng says, so the stops are below the last low. Do you set it into the system? Absolutely, yeah. All my trades, especially the automated trading that I've been working on, all the stops are already built in. Yeah, the trade is entered and the stop is automatic, absolutely. It's entered. I don't ever enter a Forex trade now with a stop already set. I hope that answers your question. Let me know. Does TradeStation have a missed pivot tool? I have TradeStation 9.1. I don't think it does. I had one made for me by Stan Dash, who works at TradeStation. He's kind of back then he wasn't such a big name, but he does a lot of seminars at all of the Las Vegas shows. And he built for me insert for free. Actually, I just asked him, and this was actually a couple years ago, or about a year and a half ago, and he named it Pivots All Purpose. It's just an ELD. I might actually even be able to put that in the forum too. I'll talk to Rob about that, but absolutely, yeah. It's all I do is go to. Well, I'll even show you, and then we can see if we can get it in there. I'll remove missed weekly pivots, and then I go to Insert Indicator. Pivots All Purpose is what it's called. Yeah, it's absolutely free. It's not proprietary by any means. And hit OK. The inputs are 1 for daily, 2 for weekly, and 3 for monthly. And then just hit OK, and then it pops right in. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to provide that. I know Rob has one for MT4. MT4 and I just don't get along. I tried as hard as I can to make it work, but we're just not compatible. But yeah, it does everything daily. And if you wanted more than one in the chart, I think that might be important. Then go and you hit Indicator, and you go to Pivots All Purpose once again, and just use 1 for daily. And I go to Pivot Point and change the color to, I don't know, magenta. And it does the daily pivots too. It's on a daily chart, so it's just a dot. You can have daily, monthly, and weekly pivots. The MT4 one is a little bit easier to utilize because it does it all for you, but this isn't hard at all. The question is, where do you normally place stops? On these trades that we're talking about, if I were doing a stock trade, I have a set price that I would do just below the low. So for example, for currencies, I would say it's X amount of pips below the low. In stocks, I would say it's X amount of cents below. So typically, I would say about 20 to 30 cents, and I say between 20 and 30. I hate that answer. I would rather give you a direct answer, but I say 20 to 30, depending on honestly the price of the stock. If it's a very expensive stock, you have to go a little bit bigger percentage-wise. But if it's a normal $20 to $30 stock, I would probably think about 20 cents. I have been doing over the past weeks extensive research on stops below the low or numerical stops in Forex, and I'm getting to the point where I'm probably just going to go numerical rather than X amount below. They're both profitable, where my EA will automatically set it in 5 pips below the low, for example, or say a 20 pip stop. I am to the point where the research is showing I might just do it numerical, which doesn't make me happy, but it seems to be profitable, and that number is right around 20 on the short trades, the 1 minute trades. But I also have a program to set it X pips below the low, and my favorite so far has been 5 pips below the low. I hope that answers that question. One is daily. Yeah, I'm sorry. 1 is daily, 2 is weekly, and 3 is monthly. And I color them all different, or else you can't keep track. It's very, very difficult to get all those dots. Any other questions? And I want to look at the other thing I wanted to talk to you tonight. All right. I'll minimize that just for a moment, and we'll go to the radar screen. I wanted to show you a typical trend trade and share with you some of the research that I've been doing. When I initially started trading Bossilator, I traded for very small targets and extraordinarily huge stops, which sounds absolutely backwards in the bizarre world of investing. But that's what I did. And the reason why is I wanted to win. And obviously, you know that I'm a tennis pro, I'm a teaching pro. I like my students to win. In my own playing career, I like to win all the time. As an athlete or a coach, you're kind of obsessed with winning, winning, winning all the time. And so I took the Bossilator principles and I waited for a certain number of bars away. The minimum was 500. As I kept trading it, I moved to 750. And even then, after that, I moved to 1,000. But I would have huge stops, humongous stops, and short little targets, 20 pips or less. And I made a lot of money. I mean, you've seen the money. That's real. It's not a fake story. You know, my girlfriend and I, we traded it every single day, and we made a lot. And it is kind of a regret in my life, if I may be honest, our webinar tonight, that I didn't continue. But what happened is, and what I found in my research, is we were going along making a lot of money, $1,000 a day, $2,000 a day. We realized that there was a trade in 2008 on the currency pairs that we were trading that would have bankrupted our whole account. Now, what is the likelihood, I ask you, that we're going to go back to 2008? What's the likelihood that the pound yen's going to drop 2,400 pips in a month or however long it took? Well, the likelihood, honestly, is probably pretty low. I mean, we are going to have disaster again, and things are going to go bad again. Every 10 years, something goes wrong. But 2008 was completely unique, in my opinion. The global nature of it, how close we came to Armageddon. Warren Buffett saying that we're about 24 hours away from going to our ATM and having no money in it. That will probably never happen again. However, here I was going along. We were trading, making a lot of money, getting ready to buy an island in Costa Rica. And we found this trade, and it just stopped me dead in my tracks. Literally, the next button that we pushed could have been the end of our account. And we had made a lot of money. We had made over $60,000, I think, in both of our accounts total, over 50% on our account. But it was extraordinarily fun to trade with little tiny targets and huge stops. And we hardly ever lost. I mean, we won and won and won and won and won and won and won. But I couldn't do it. And ever since that moment, I've been researching on, well, where do you put your stop then? Because now that you're placing stops, you're going to lose. And I personally don't like losing. So it's been a long road. It's been tons and tons and tons and tons of hours. But in building my EA that I'm going to trade for the fun for my investors, in building the EA, I learned something extraordinarily important that Rob and I were talking about actually just yesterday. And that is, I have come full circle. Even though I made all my money with little targets and huge stops, now I've come to the conclusion that it's actually opposite. That you need to have absolutely huge profit targets and little tiny stops. Now, Rob has mentioned that before. It's actually the basis of the course. And I understood it and I believed it, but I had never tested it. I mean, I tested it by hand, but I never tested it to any great quantity. But what I've found is that I've gone to the 1 minute chart because that's the time frame that I enjoy, and I want to get more trades. I want more action. I found on the 1 minute chart that there's hardly any way possible using our Bossilator rules. There's hardly any way possible to make significant amount of money to trade for a living with small stops and small profit targets. I can't find a way. I've been doing it 5 hours a day, in the morning, in the night, every night, testing and testing and testing. And the conclusion I've come to is that you just can't do it. So what does that mean? That means, well, it means we're on the right track, that the course that we're all taking is going to work. But it means we're going to lose. And that is something that's absolutely huge that Rob has talked about. You have to be ready to lose. If you want to make money, you have to be willing to lose. And honestly, you have to be willing to lose a lot. I have been testing some extraordinarily profitable systems and gotten some, or not systems, I've only tested one system, but extraordinarily profitable results on this system on the euro dollar. And the win rate is extraordinarily low. We're talking about between 10 and 20% winners. But the profit targets, the minimum profit target that I will accept now is 3.5 to 1. And we've talked about that. So that's what I wanted to share with you all tonight, and that's where I'm at. And when I'm getting ready to go live on my investors account, whatever currency I've decided, right now I'm down to the euro dollar and the Aussie dollar, the only ones I'm looking at, and I'm testing the rest. But I have to be willing, and I am willing now, but you have to be willing to trade with little tiny stops and huge profit targets. So here's an example of an actual trade that was taken simulated. But I'm getting ready to go live here within the next 7 days as soon as I get my 24-hour online virtual server. But here's a trade that it took. These are just mini Bollinger Bands. All I want is a retracement, big surprise, after it gets to around 200 bars. So what I'm looking for in my strategy, which is exactly everything we talk about, is I'm looking for 200 bars away, looking for a stochastic. It's cyan now, stochastic oversold, which you can see here, and then a break of a trend line to get into the entry. You can see that here's my trend line. You can see that the EA says a trend entry, a trend long entry to get into my trade. Now on a Fibonacci, you can guess, and I can draw it for you if you like, you can guess that this went down on a Fib trade, this went down past the 50%, so it was almost a no-go. But on my system, or a basic trend trade, stochastic oversold, the Bollinger Band gives me a feeling of it having retraced and gone down. That, in conjunction with stochastic and the trend line, is a long trade. Now, here, honestly, in all of my testing and even some of my live trading with small amounts, I would be so tempted, incredibly tempted, to take it here. But those days for me are over. You're looking at, how many pips is that? You're looking at the close there was 27.90, and you're looking at the high there, 45. That's 55 pips. That's a great trade, but it's not a great trade for me anymore. I have to have more. So it came back down, and that's heartbreaking, of course. But it came down and it hit my profit target, and you can see that I'm out and I have 0 now. That was 70 pips, and that's the profit target that I'm looking at currently, and that may change. I may find something better, but that is a typical trade from what was that, January 18th, and that's a system that I've been testing exhaustively using all of our Bossilator rules that we talk about. Stochastic oversold, entering on a trend line, and then going for a 20 pip stop, which you can't see on this chart, sorry, a 20 pip stop and a 70 pip target. Let's check questions. Ask about stocks. Okay, that'd be great. Wednesday, Tuesday, weekly. Okay. Oh, I have to prepare for the black swan. Well, the black swan is a terrible animal, and that's exactly what stopped my trading. It was what stopped all my success. I mean, I'm absolutely thankful that 2008 happened. I'm absolutely thankful that we have it so close to current day. We can go back and test basically Armageddon and be able to test our strategies on such an extraordinary time. But if 2008 hadn't happened, I wouldn't have stopped, and maybe I would have made a lot more money. But I wouldn't have grown, and I wouldn't have come to a place where I am now, and I wouldn't be ready to trade money. I wouldn't be ready to try to quit my job, and I wouldn't be ready to do all these things if it wasn't for that black swan, that terrible animal. But no, I'm very, very pleased that the black swan came in the form of 2008 because it changed my life. The Aussie dollar made a great move. What time frame chart in the 15 minute? 30 minutes still. Oh, faster stochastic. Um, I found it doesn't matter that much. With all my testing on TradeStation, I can test literally any stochastic number that I want. Some currencies like it larger in the 30, like we like it. The euro dollar happens to like it right around 10. So you can see my stochastic down there at 10. I'm, it doesn't make that much of a difference, really, with the big profit target. But the 10 gets me into more trades, and getting into more trades gives me more chances to get to 70, and so it's in the end more profitable. I'm not really convinced 100% that the number matters, but what matters to me and what matters to my computer testing is that if it gets down to 10 and comes back out, it does it more often. I've got more of a chance to make that 3.5 to 1. So yeah, the stochastic setting you see on my chart is 10, but like I said, some other currencies love 30. So I'm not sure it matters. Um, but I would love for you to look at 10. I'm absolutely recommending it. I've seen good results with 10, so take a look at it. Any other questions? When you set to break even? Fascinating question, and I've tested that like crazy. Psychologically, if I were trading live by hand, if I hadn't done automated trading whatsoever, the move to break even would happen pretty quickly. And you can make money. I've hand tested it and you can make money. And I've even computer tested it and you can make money moving to break even. What I found, and I never knew, honestly, until this point, until I was able to test thousands and thousands of trades now with computer, is that the move to break even needs to be a little bit later. So to get the same amount of profit for me, the move to break even on this 70 pip move would have to be between 50 and 70. Honestly, the testing that I've done in the past week has shown even the later in the game you move to break even, the better, the more profit. Um, it is psychologically by hand so much better to move to break even, and I absolutely 100% recommend it. I've just found that you make a little bit more money if you wait as long as possible, which stinks. And that goes back to what I said earlier as far as winning percentage. If you cannot stand losing, then get that thing to break even. You're going to make a little less money, perhaps, in the long run, but you're going to stay in the game. And that's the most important thing. Every trader that I listen to, and I try to listen to, I mean, that's my favorite thing to talk about. So I listen to any trader talk and anything that's read in any trade magazine, futures magazine, or anything. They all move to break even. They all do. And they don't care if it makes less money. And so keep that in mind. They don't care if they make a little less because that keeps them in the game. But the move to break even on a 70 pip trade, I wouldn't even consider it probably until about 50. If you want to psychologically feel good, I do it in the what we always talk about between 20 and 30. It's like I said, a little less money, but a little easier psychologically. How long did that last trade take? That's a good question. Here's our entry at 7 a.m. on January 18th, 2012, and it's the same day. Ended up at 12:30. So what are we looking at? 5 hours? Yeah. Obviously, the longer profit targets are excruciating too. They last longer. 5 hours isn't excruciating per se, but if you're going for even the Aussie dollar likes it even longer. It likes an even longer profit target according to my testing, and that can be a couple days. And going back to my trading when I was making a lot of money, I mean those trades could last 30 minutes. Those trades could last 10 minutes, and I can't tell you how wonderful it is to get a short little successful trade in a few minutes. I mean, it just made my day. It was so much fun. Um, however, I've found now that I'm a new man that I have to accept the fact now that the only thing that's going to happen quickly is my stop out, and my profit target's going to take a little bit longer. Um, Any other questions or anything else that you want to look at tonight? I'll wait a moment, and then I'll show you an example. While I'm waiting, you can see, even talking about losing a whole lot, let's go to the next blue line. Well, I'll just do this. This is the performance report on my strategy, and here's a trades list. And you can see that after my great winner, 11:15, yeah, after my great, yeah, after my great winner, oh, we've got loser, loser, loser. Oh, and there's my winner on 12:13, and then loser, loser. So you can see that it's extraordinary for me. It's been such an eye-opening experience to see loser, 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 loser. I mean, that drives me crazy. But then I look at the profit report at the end, and it makes the amount of money that I want, and it's extraordinarily fun. So that is something that's absolutely something that you have to look deep inside your own mind and then decide, do you want the money or do you want to win? You know, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? It's been huge for me. It's been a very, very huge change for me. Meng says, oh wait, let's scroll back. Scott, your 1033 settings on the stochastic, are they used to time your entries? If, say, prices break a trend line, do we wait for stats to come out? Great question. It has to be, I want all of this happening at once. I want as much explosion up because I'm looking for 70 pips. I want as much of a coiled spring explosion upward as possible. So to answer your question, when it goes stochastic, that's not enough because I do want that trend line break too. But if stochastic, let's say, for example, goes oversold and comes out of it but hasn't broken a trend line and then gets in the trend line later, I won't take it. I absolutely won't take it. Now, what's the maximum? On a 1033, I will not take a trade 3 bars past when it was oversold. Does that make sense? On this chart, because it's color-coded, I would not take a trade 3 bars past when it was colored, cyan in this case. If it was just, if I didn't have the coloring, or if you have MT4, I would not, after it came out, I would check the chart, I would check the bars, and I would count, and I would draw my trend line. And if it's not within 2 bars or less, 2 bars or less, I don't take the trade. So stochastic, in that sense, I don't enter on the change of the stochastic. However, I am requiring that all to happen at exactly the same time, within 2 bars, of course. What do you use the Bollinger Bands on the 1-minute chart? I use it just as a retracement mechanism. What does the Fibonacci trade do? The Fibonacci trade waits for a retracement and then goes with the trend. I am going to probably program Rob's Fibonacci trade. That's probably next on my list. I'm going to, as time permits, program all of Rob's strategies into an EA for TradeStation. That's kind of just a little goal of mine because I love them all. But this one went first because it was easier. Fibonacci trade is a little bit more comprehensive to get it coded. But all I'm waiting for is 200 bars away and a retracement. But instead of letting it come down to the 38 line, I'll just draw one real quick. Let's just pretend it's not real. That's not really our rules. But let's say instead of waiting for it to come down here and then enter back into the 38 zone, all I did to simulate Rob's rule was put a very average Bollinger Band. Inputs are 20, just your typical Bollinger Band on a 1-minute chart. I use the Bollinger Band as a retracement. It's kind of like my requirement to get down to that 38 level on the trifecta trade. So I just put that in. It was just easier to code. It was just a simulation of Rob's rules. Once it retraces and it's 200 away, then my stochastic has to be oversold, trend line, and we're off. Priority lies in the trend line break. Yes and no. I'm not in the trade without the trend line break, but everything else must be met. All the other requirements must be met first. I must have my 200 away. Nothing happens without the 200 away. Then nothing happens without my retracement. Then nothing happens without my stochastic. And then I get in the trend line if that's all been met. So priority isn't really the trend line because that's kind of last on the list. They're all kind of equal priorities, 1, 2, 3, 4, and if they're all met, then I go. I miss a lot of trades, but as I said, I like the coiled spring effect, and I found it's just more profitable to wait for all these things to line up. You can have stretches. If I took one of these out and just say just a trend line break, or even just a stochastic break, there are stretches where it makes extraordinary amounts of money. I did a test the other night, and I just started giggling. It was so much money in 1 year. It was like um, almost 600% in a year. Something. I mean, just extra. I couldn't believe it. But it doesn't work consistently. In a different market environment, it was not profitable at all, and that's not acceptable to me. Even if I have to stay in the game. So by waiting for all these requirements for my trend line, for stochastic, for the 200 away, by waiting for all that, I stay in the game, number one, and I still make a decent amount of money. But the truth is, if you eliminated one of these filters, you'd get more trades, and you'd make more money at times, but you wouldn't make more money, at least according to my testing, in the long run. Hope that answers your question. Can we use this setting to place, or do they have to be different uses? Can you use this setting to replace the 30-10-10? Um, yeah, right now I'm, and again, just tell me if I don't get the question right. Right now on the euro dollar only, my testing it's slightly. I'm being picky, but I'm trying to trade for my living. Um, the 10 now has replaced. Yeah, the 30-10-10 now is gone. It made money, but the 10 made more. And again, the reason why is it just got me into more trades. And I just said I'm trying to stay out of trades, but within reason. I'm trying to take as many as I can, as long as they're reasonably coiled and reasonably explosive. So I don't really care about the stochastic setting, as long as it gets me into enough trades, but not too much. I'm trying to find that sweet spot. So right now, the 10-3-3 has replaced it, yes. I hope that answers your question. How many trades do you take daily? You could get a trade or two a day if you eliminate one of these filters. But I get, well, let's see, I get 200 trades a year. I get only a couple. It's not every day. It's like every other day. Because it goes to 200 away every single day. But if there's 300 trading days in a year, I'm getting about 220, 240 trades. So it's not every other day, but it's not every day either. It's like one trade every day and a half, roughly, if the math is right. So yeah, I've since 2008, I've taken over 400 trades on the system. And that's about 600 days. So it's about 60% of the time. Next question. By the way, can 1033 use spot for? Oh, yeah, you can use any stochastic setting to get divergences, or yeah, absolutely. The Wallaby setting, I think, might have even uh, been a different number, maybe 733. We'll have to ask Rob about that and his Wallaby. But absolutely, you can get divergence on any stochastic setting. Absolutely. The 30-10-10 has been my friend for years, and like I said, if the 10 didn't make it just a little bit more money over the long term, I'd still be using the 30. And I initially ran all my testing on the 30. I love the 30. I don't like the 10, but I'm making a sacrifice for what I like, to make a little bit more money. And again, the only reason is it gets more trades. Well, I've really enjoyed the webinar. I'm enjoying sharing what I'm doing. For me, it's getting very close to D-Day. We're getting all the accounts ready, and we're getting ready to go live. This is imminent, maybe even by the next webinar we have. So I'm absolutely willing to share with everyone in the course what I'm doing. All I've done is basically follow Rob's rules and do what he's taught me to do. He he guides me, as he guides all of us, and letting me know what might work and where to try. And I've just been keeping him up to date, and testing and testing and testing like crazy. And this is where I'm at, and I'm not doing anything that anybody else can't do. I encourage you to hand test as many trades as you can. If you have the resources, get an EA or get a robot just for testing purposes. But hopefully that we can save you a little bit of time by doing the testing ourselves and just relaying that to you, so you can skip a few steps. And that's important, that maybe we can save you hours and hours and hours. But if you don't have any questions, oh, do we have one more? If you can share the pivot tool from TradeStation, that'd be great. Sure. I'll put this right here on my little sticky note right here. Missed pivot ELD. All right, I'll absolutely do that, and I'll try to get that posted in the forum by tomorrow. All right. Well, I hope that helped everybody. I'm no substitute for Rob, but I hope I was able to give you something as far as the missed pivots and as far as small stops and big targets. Looking forward to being back with Rob next time, and we'll see you soon. Bye.